I stood near the back of the banquet hall, clutching a glass of champagne I had no intention of drinking. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting elegant reflections across white linen tablecloths, golden chair bows and centerpieces of imported lilies. A large banner hung over the stage. Congratulations on your retirement, Harold. Everyone was gathered to celebrate Harold Pierce, our CEO for 25 years, a man who ran Titan Systems like a kingdom and made sure everyone knew he was the king. Harold, with his perfect silver hair, custom-tailored suits, and permanent smirk, was holding court near the stage, shaking hands, telling his favorite stories for the thousandth time. My name is Alex Brennan, and tonight Harold had no idea that the company he thought was his forever was now mine. But before we get to that part, let me tell you how it all began. I first met Harold Pierce 11 years ago, fresh out of my MBA, bursting with ambition, and wearing the only decent suit I could afford. Titan Systems was one of those mid-sized tech firms that dreamed of playing with the big boys' software solutions, enterprise-ite buzzwords out the wazoo. They'd grown fast during the 90s dot-com boom and survived the crash, thanks largely to Harold's ruthless cost-cutting and no-excuses management style. During my first week, I sat in the back row at a staff meeting, silently taking notes as Harold paced at the front of the conference room. "Look around this room," he barked, eyes sweeping over the group. "Half of you won't be here in 5 years. And that's fine, because I only keep winners." It was the first time I realized the man saw Titan less like a company and more like a gladiatorial arena. It terrified some people. It lit a fire in me. A year later, I'd earned a spot in the Strategic Initiatives Group, Harold's personal brain trust. He loved people who worked insane hours and craved impossible goals. I was perfect for him. I lived and breathed Titan. I stayed late. I pulled all-nighters. I volunteered for every high-profile project. And for a while, Harold rewarded me. Then came the day I made the biggest mistake of my life. It was 7 years ago, a Monday morning in October, when Harold called me into his office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. His desk was clear, except for a single folder. "Alex," he said, steepling his fingers, "I want your take on something. The board's pushing me to find a successor. They think I should name a COO someone to groom for CEO. You've been hungry for a bigger role. Tell me why it should be you." My pulse raced. I'd imagined this moment so many times practicing speeches in the shower. "I know this company inside and out," I said. "I've led cross-functional teams, negotiated major contracts, and turned around underperforming divisions. I'm not afraid to make tough calls. I'm loyal, and I believe Titan can grow far beyond where we are if we take bolder risks." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Stop." Harold leaned back, studying me like a bug under glass. "You're talented, Alex, no question. But you'll never be CEO." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Why?" "Because you're too soft," Harold said. "You care too much what people think. You want to be liked. CEOs can't afford that. They have to be killers." He rose and came around the desk, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Take the advice, kid. Don't embarrass yourself trying to reach for something that's not in your DNA." He dismissed me with a single flick of his wrist. I left Harold's office that day shaking with rage. I wanted to quit. I wanted to scream in his face, but I did neither. Instead, I went home and stared at the ceiling all night, replaying his words, "You'll never be CEO." And that's when the idea first began forming. What if I didn't have to climb Harold's ladder? What if I could simply own the ladder? And I started quietly. No dramatic gestures, no angry confrontations. I kept doing my job, showing up early, staying late. Harold probably thought I'd accepted my fate. But behind the scenes, I began researching how companies like Titan got bought, private equity deals, leveraged buyouts, strategic acquisitions. I read every book I could find on M&A. I connected with bankers and investors at networking events. I took meetings under fake names. I became a ghost in the financial world gathering intel. Meanwhile, Titan Systems began to falter. We'd grown complacent, losing market share to newer, faster competitors. Harold refused to listen to any suggestion that the company needed to change. "This is how we've always done it," he'd bark whenever anyone dared challenge him. Morale dropped. Talent left. Our valuation dipped. I watched quietly, biding my time. Then came the opening I'd been waiting for. 3 years ago, a rumor swept through the office that Harold was considering retirement. He dropped hints about spending more time with his yacht and writing a book about leadership. The board wanted a succession plan, but Harold insisted he wasn't going anywhere yet. Meanwhile, our stock price sank lower. That's when I made my first move. I approached a private equity firm, Ridgeview Capital, whose partners I'd met at a finance conference. I showed them a confidential analysis I'd prepared of Titan Systems, our hidden strengths, our underutilized assets, our bloated management. I laid out exactly how the company could be streamlined and rebranded to crush our rivals. They were impressed, and they made me a proposition: if I could help them secure the deal, they'd back me as CEO. It would be the ultimate middle finger to Harold. For the next 2 years, I worked two jobs. By day, I was a diligent vice president at Titan, playing the loyal soldier. By night, I was orchestrating the financial maneuver that would change my life. There were moments I thought the stress would kill me, hiding encrypted documents on secret drives, sneaking calls with bankers from parking lots, smiling at Harold in meetings while plotting to dethrone him. The duplicity ate at me, but the vision of that day kept me going. The day I would own Titan Systems, and Harold would be out of my way forever. Finally, 6 months ago, Ridgeview made a quiet bid for Titan Systems. Harold was furious. He tried to block the sale, screaming about vultures and corporate raiders. But the board, terrified of our declining market cap, forced negotiations. The deal was structured to keep it secret until finalized. Harold thought he'd fight off the takeover. He didn't know the buyer's incoming CEO was me. Which brings us back to tonight. I watched Harold step onto the stage. Applause filled the room. He grinned that same condescending grin as he waved to the crowd. "Thank you all," he began. "It's been an honor leading Titan for 25 years. We built something incredible together. I'm excited for the future, and I'm proud to leave the company in good hands." He glanced toward the board chairman, who was waiting at the edge of the stage. "Tonight, we also have a special announcement about the future of Titan Systems." Harold continued, "I've heard some rumors about new ownership, and I want to clear those up. Titan is staying independent," and the board chairman stepped forward and gently touched Harold's arm. "Actually, Harold, let me take this one." The room fell into hushed confusion. Harold blinked, looking thrown off for the first time in years. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chairman said into the microphone, "I'm pleased to announce that as of this afternoon, Titan Systems has officially been acquired by Ridgeview Capital." Gasps echoed through the room. Harold's jaw dropped. "And I'm even more pleased," the chairman continued to introduce our new chief executive officer, Alex Brennan. The spotlight swung around and landed on me. My heart thundered as hundreds of faces turned in shock. I lowered my glass, set it on the table, and stepped forward. As I walked toward the stage, it felt like the floor might drop out beneath me. My pulse banged against my ribs so hard, I half expected people to hear it through my suit. Yet my steps were steady, deliberate. I'd waited 7 years for this moment. A hush had fallen over the ballroom. The only sound was the polite clinking of silverware being hastily set down as the entire room craned to see what was happening. Harold was staring at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. In all the years I'd known him, I'd never seen him look so utterly blindsided. I climbed the steps to the stage, shook the chairman's hand, and turned to face the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," I said into the microphone, my voice calm, though my insides were a war zone. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate Harold's remarkable tenure. I'm honored to stand here tonight as the new CEO of Titan Systems." A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. Faces I'd worked with for over a decade were staring at me in shock, some with dawning smiles, others with confusion or fear. I caught Harold's eye again. His jaw clenched and he took a step toward me. "Alex," he hissed, his voice barely audible over the mic. What the hell is this? You went behind my back. I kept my eyes on the crowd, speaking firmly into the microphone. Titan Systems is entering a new chapter. Under Ridgeview Capital's ownership, we'll have resources to innovate and expand in ways we've never done before. I'm committed to honoring the legacy Harold built. Bullshit, Harold barked. His voice carried clearly. A few people gasped. He turned toward the crowd, eyes blazing. This kid doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's been plotting this like some backstabber. The chairman stepped closer, laying a hand on Harold's shoulder. Harold, it's time. Don't you dare touch me. Harold snapped, shaking him off. This company is mine. Now the entire room was tense. People shifted in their seats, unsure whether to intervene or run for the doors. I spoke again, my voice low and steady. Harold, it's over. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His fists were balled tight. The veins in his temples bulged. Then all at once, the fight seemed to drain out of him. He sagged a little, breathing heavily, as though the weight of 25 years had finally landed on his shoulders in a single blow. He stared at me, eyes glassy. You think you're a killer now, Alex? You're not. You're still that scared little kid. I felt a flicker of the old hurt, but I pushed it aside. Thank you for your service to Titan, Harold. We all wish you the best in your retirement. The chairman gently guided him away from the microphone. Security appeared at the edge of the stage, subtle but present. Harold didn't resist. He allowed himself to be led off the stage and out a side door. Shoulders hunched, the great and fearsome Harold Pierce, suddenly looking very small. For a moment, no one in the room moved. It felt like the entire company was holding its breath. I cleared my throat. Well, I suppose that wasn't quite the retirement speech any of us expected. But let me assure you, Titan Systems is going to thrive. And starting Monday, we'll be meeting with every division to share our new vision and hear your ideas. A few hesitant claps began. Then the chairman started clapping more firmly. One by one, people joined in. Soon the room was thundering with applause. I nodded, forcing a smile. Inside, my stomach was a swirling pit. After I stepped down from the stage, I was instantly surrounded. Alex, did you know about this all along? Is Harold really gone for good? Are we all losing our jobs? Who's Ridgeview? Are they going to gut us? I fielded question after question, trying to stay calm and confident. I repeated the same phrases over and over. No one's losing their jobs right now. We're looking for ways to grow, not shrink. I'll be as transparent as possible. But the eyes staring back at me were nervous. Some employees seemed excited, others terrified. Harold had ruled Titan like a tyrant, but at least people knew the rules under him. Now I was the unknown. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Brian West, my primary contact at Ridgeview Capital. Brian, well done. Keep cool. Call me tomorrow. Around 10 p.m., the crowd began thinning out. People were still buzzing with gossip, but the initial shock was fading into exhaustion. The caterers started clearing tables. Soft piano music played over the speakers, trying to restore the celebration mood. I finally slipped away, heading to a quiet hallway outside the banquet room. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and exhaled deeply. My body was trembling. Holy shit, I whispered to myself. I actually did it. Did what I opened my eyes. It was Jessica Choi. Jessica had been at Titan as long as I had, an absolute rock star in product management. Brilliant, fearless, fiercely loyal to her teams. She was wearing an elegant navy cocktail dress, her dark hair pinned up. She looked tired, but sharp-eyed. I'm guessing you didn't just happen to become CEO tonight, she said. So, you gonna tell me what the hell happened? I hesitated. Jessica was one of the few people I trusted completely, but even she hadn't known the full plan. I've been working on this for years, I admitted. Ridgeview approached me about running Titan if they bought it. Harold, he'd never let go. This was the only way. Jessica folded her arms. So what helped outsiders buy the company from under us? I helped save the company from Harold. I shot back maybe a bit too sharply. He was running Titan into the ground. Jessica gave me a cool stare. Maybe. But you didn't tell me. You didn't tell anyone. That's going to make people nervous, Alex. I know, I said, voice softening. But it was the only way. If Harold had found out, he'd have burned me alive. She sighed, rubbing her forehead. And now you're the boss. Jesus. You realize half the exec team is already plotting how to take you down. Right, I know, I said. I'm counting on it. Jessica arched an eyebrow. Meaning I'm going to let them reveal themselves. And then I'll clean house. For a second, a faint smile touched her lips. Damn, you really did learn something from Harold. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table laptop, open phone buzzing every few minutes with messages from employees, pressing queries, board members. My hands were shaking too badly to type sometimes. It felt like my entire nervous system was firing on all cylinders. But beneath the terror was a quiet, blazing satisfaction. For the first time in my life, Harold's voice wasn't echoing in my head, telling me what I couldn't do. Monday morning, I walked into Titan Systems headquarters as the CEO. I half expected Harold's ghost to be looming in the lobby, sneering at me from his massive oil portrait. But the security guards nodded respectfully as I passed. The receptionist stammered out, "A good morning, Mr. Brennan." I rode the elevator up to the executive floor, feeling the weight of every single pair of eyes that turned to watch me step out. By 9:15, I was standing in front of a crowded conference room facing the top 40 managers in the company. Nervous chatter filled the air. A few looked at me with hope. Others looked like they were ready to throw me out the window. I held up my hands for quiet. "I know you all have questions," it began. "I know some of you are angry or scared. I'm not going to pretend the last few days haven't been shocking. But let me be perfectly clear. Titan Systems has an incredible future ahead, and I'm here to make sure we get there." A skeptical voice cut in. "Why should we believe you're any different from Harold? You just staged a hostile takeover." I nodded. "Fair question. Here's my answer." Harold stopped listening. He surrounded himself with people who told him what he wanted to hear. "I'm not going to be that CEO. Starting today, we're making decisions based on data, not ego. And if that means shaking up the org chart, so be it." Silence. Then another voice piped up. "Are there going to be layoffs?" I took a deep breath. Not today, not tomorrow. But yes, Titan's going to look different a year from now. We have duplicate teams. We have bloat. We're bleeding money. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But if we do this right, we'll save more jobs than we lose. We'll grow again. I let my words hang in the air. The managers exchanged glances, reading each other's reactions. Finally, Jessica, who was standing near the back, gave me a subtle nod. That afternoon, I started a series of private meetings. One by one, I called in every senior leader to see where they stood. It was part diplomacy, part interrogation. Some pledged loyalty, some hedged. A few tried to threaten me with resignations, convinced Ridgeview would beg them to stay. I politely told them I'd accept their resignations on the spot. By Wednesday, word spread quickly the new CEO wasn't bluffing. But even as I felt myself gaining control, Harold wasn't finished with me. Thursday morning, I found a large manila envelope on my desk. No name, no return address. Inside was a typed note. "You think you've won. But I know things about Ridgeview Capital you don't. If you stay CEO, you'll regret it. Walk away now. Harold." Beneath the note was a USB drive. My hands tightened around the envelope. My first instinct was fury. My second was fear. I stared at the drive, a sick feeling growing in my gut. What the hell did Harold know? The USB drive felt like it weighed 10 pounds in my hand. I stared at it for a long time, turning it over between my fingers, as if it might somehow reveal its secrets just by being held long enough. But it didn't. I slid it into my desk drawer and locked it. Not because I was afraid to look, but because I needed to look alone with a clear head. Whatever Harold thought he had on Ridgeview or on me, I wasn't going to play into his hands by panicking. Still, it gnawed at me for the rest of the day. Every time I tried to focus on something else, supply chain meetings, marketing realignments, strategy sessions, it hovered in my brain like a shadow just out of view. Harold's note was short, but his message was clear. I lost the war, but I planted a bomb. That night, long after the last employee had left the building, I sat alone in my office with the lights dim. I took out the USB drive and plugged it into my laptop, making sure the Wi-Fi was turned off and my network connections disabled. I wasn't about to let a virus or Trojan horse detonate inside Titan's systems. It contained a single folder titled Ridgeview Internal Docs. Inside were 3 PDFs and a recording. I opened the first file. My heart began to race as I skimmed. It was an internal memo from a Ridgeview senior partner dated 8 months ago, outlining their exit strategy for Titan Systems. The language was dry corporate terms like streamline for acquisition, divest, redundant assets, and maximize EBITDA for resale. But the meaning was clear. Ridgeview wasn't here for the long haul. They wanted to fatten the company up, polish it, and flip it within 24 months, preferably to a larger tech firm or a multinational conglomerate. I clicked into the second PDF. This one was more damning. A list of division performance scores, each ranked not by actual productivity or innovation, but by saleability. Notes beside each team read like eBay listings: cloud ops, decent margins, limited; IP recommends spin-off or outsource; R&D, too cost-heavy, low licensing; upside restructure or eliminate; customer success, valued for optics, retain short-term. They were looking at Titan like a garage sale, and I was the fool holding the for sale sign. I opened the third document, a draft of a transition plan. In it, Ridgeview laid out timelines for replacing key executives once the dirty work was done. One line was highlighted in yellow: CEO role, potentially transitional, replaced post-acquisition for optics Q4 2026. My name was never mentioned, but it didn't have to be. They were planning to use me as the front man, then toss me aside like everyone else. I felt sick. Finally, I clicked the audio file. It was a recording of a conversation between 2 Ridgeview partners. One was Brian West, my direct contact. The other voice I didn't recognize. "Let Alex feel like he's in charge," Brian said on the recording. "Give him the steering wheel, but we're the ones laying the track." The other man chuckled. "You think he'll ever figure it out?" "Doesn't matter," Brian said. "By the time he does, we'll be gone, and so will Titan." I sat there staring at the screen, rage boiling up in my chest. They'd played me, used my obsession with Harold, my ambition, made me the executioner of my own company. Harold hadn't just been petty, he was right. The next morning I didn't sleep in. I didn't wallow. I got to work. First, I scheduled a private meeting with Jessica Choi. If there was anyone I could trust to help me untangle this mess, it was her. We met in a coffee shop far from the office. She looked at me with concern the moment I walked in. "You look like hell," she said. "I found something," I said quietly, "and we have a problem." I showed her the documents. Let her listen to the recording. When she was done, she leaned back in her seat, folding her arms. "So Ridgeview's just here to carve us up and cash out," she said flatly. "Yeah. And you're the guy holding the knife." "Yeah." She was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, "What do you want to do?" "I want to stop them." Jessica blinked. "How they own us now." I looked her in the eyes. "What if we buy them out?" She laughed once hard. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." Jessica stared at me. "With what money, Alex? We're barely out of the red." "Then we raise it," I said, quietly, strategically, the same way I got Ridgeview in. "We find partners, tech-focused, long-term investors who believe in rebuilding Titan, not flipping it. People who hate Ridgeview's methods. We make a counterplay." She shook her head slowly, not dismissively, but in awe. "You're insane." I leaned forward. "Jessica, we can't let them destroy this company. We both know what Titan could be if it wasn't shackled by short-term greed." I need you. She looked at me for a long moment, then gave a crooked smile. You always did like trying to take down giants. What followed was the most stressful 8 weeks of my life. While publicly playing the role of Ridgeview's obedient CEO, I began building a shadow alliance, a quiet coalition of people inside and outside Titan who believed in something bigger. Jessica worked the internal angle vetting loyal leaders, identifying Ridgeview loyalists, keeping morale from collapsing. I tapped my network venture capitalist former clients, friends of friends at sovereign funds and family offices. I pitched a vision not just of saving Titan, but transforming it, a rebirth under independent control, driven by innovation and mission, not spreadsheets. For every 10 doors that closed in my face, one opened just wide enough. Momentum grew, bit by bit, dollar by dollar. Meanwhile, Ridgeview started asking questions. Brian West called me late one night. Hey, Alex, some noise is coming out of your office. People asking questions about internal valuations. You aren't going rogue on us, are you? I lied through my teeth. Just curiosity. People like to gossip when the old regime falls. He laughed. Good, let them talk. As long as the keys go up and to the right. Up and to the right, I echoed. Got it. But I knew I was running out of time. Ridgeview was planning to announce phase 1 of their sell-off in Q1 of the next year. I had exactly 4 months to beat them at their own game. Then came the first crack in the armor. A mid-level finance analyst named Maria Lim sent an internal memo questioning some unusual restructuring expenses Ridgeview had quietly pushed through the books. It wasn't much, but it was enough to trigger a compliance review. That review got picked up by our internal legal counsel, which led to a pause in Ridgeview's sell-off strategy, which gave us just enough time. On a rainy Tuesday in December, we did it. We secured a deal with 3 heavyweight backers, 2 tech-focused private funds, and 1 legacy firm that had once tried to acquire Titan 5 years earlier. Jessica and I walked into a closed-door meeting with Ridgeview's board reps and handed them an ultimatum. Sell us back majority ownership, or we go public with everything, the manipulation, the fraud, the predatory practices, the intent to gut the company. For a moment, Brian West looked at me the way Harold once had, like I was a cockroach who'd learned how to use a sword. Then he smiled coldly. You just made yourself a lot of enemies, Brennan. I've had worse, I said. The papers were signed 6 weeks later. Titan Systems was ours again. We formed a new holding group, gave equity to key employees, and officially cut Ridgeview out of the picture. The press covered it as a stunning reversal, David beating Goliath twice. I didn't care about the headlines. I cared that we'd won. 2 months later, I got an envelope in the mail. No name, just a typed note inside. I told you they'd screw you. But you played the long game. You're not soft anymore. I guess you proved me wrong. Harold. There was no return address, no phone number, just that. I stared at the note for a long time. Then I burned it, because I wasn't doing this to prove Harold wrong anymore. I was doing it to prove myself right. 6 months after buying Ridgeview out of Titan Systems, I was sitting in my office at 7 p.m., staring at the city lights sparkling outside the windows. The skyline felt different now. Not a fortress I was trying to break into, but a territory I finally owned. Yet ownership came with its own kind of exhaustion. I closed my eyes and rubbed my temples. The company was safe for now, but safe didn't pay the bills. We were still bleeding money from Harold's years of mismanagement, and our reputation in the industry was bruised from the chaos of the buyouts. I'd inherited a battered ship. Now I had to turn it around. A knock sounded at the door. Come in, I called. Jessica slipped inside carrying 2 coffee cups. She set one in front of me. You look like you haven't slept in a week, she said. That's because I haven't, I replied, half smiling. She sat across from me, crossing her legs. I just got off a call with our sales leads in Europe. They're on board with the restructuring plan, but they're worried we're about to slash headcount. I sighed. They're not wrong to worry. We've still got duplicate teams from all those acquisitions Harold made. It's a mess, but we can't afford to just cut people blindly. Jessica studied me. So what's the plan, Alex? Because right now people are confused, they're scared, and they're looking at you to tell them where we're going. I know. I took a deep breath. We have to give them a mission, a real one. She raised an eyebrow, meaning we stop trying to be everything to everyone. Harold spread us too thin. I want Titan to focus on one core thing and do it better than anyone else. Jessica tilted her head, intrigued. And that one thing is cloud security, I said. We've got brilliant talent in that space. And after all these hacks and breaches in the news, companies are desperate for bulletproof solutions. It's where the growth is. It's where we can actually lead instead of follow. Jessica sipped her coffee thoughtfully. So we become the security company. Exactly. And we shed everything else. Legacy products, half-baked services Harold kept alive out of ego. Gone. She gave a slow, approving nod. It's bold and terrifying. I grinned. Welcome to my life. 2 weeks later, I stood on stage in the same auditorium where Harold used to thunder at us like a general before battle. The room was packed with hundreds of Titan employees, plus another 1,000 streaming online. Faces stared up at me, some curious, some wary, some flat-out skeptical. I cleared my throat. When I first started here, Harold told me that half the people in this room wouldn't be here in 5 years. That was his way of saying Titan was only for the toughest. A few people shifted in their seats, a ripple of unease. But here's the thing, he was wrong. I let that hang there for a moment. Titan is not just for killers. Titan is for the brilliant, the innovators, the people who care enough to fight for better solutions, not just bigger profits. And right now, the world has a security problem. Data breaches are skyrocketing. Companies are terrified of losing customer trust. Governments are desperate to protect critical infrastructure. We have the talent to solve these problems. That's what we're going to do. A murmur spread through the audience. People glanced at each other. I continued. Effective immediately. Titan Systems is focusing entirely on becoming the world leader in cloud security. Everything else is getting spun off, sold, or shut down. Yes, it's going to be painful, but if we succeed, Titan won't just survive. We'll lead. I glanced at Jessica standing off to the side. She gave me a faint nod. This is our shot, I said, and I'm inviting every one of you to be part of it. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then someone started clapping, then another, and another, until the entire room was on its feet. It was the start of the hardest year of my life. We sold 2 legacy product lines, bringing in just enough cash to fund a new R&D lab focused exclusively on advanced encryption and threat detection AI. We laid off 240 people, a decision that still keeps me up at night. But we offered generous severance, and many of those folks landed jobs quickly thanks to our network. It was small comfort. We rebuilt Titan's branding from the ground up. New logo, new messaging, new website. We stopped trying to sound like a dinosaur. We started speaking the language of innovation. Jessica became my unofficial second-in-command, running interference with teams solving crises before they hit my desk. She never complained, even on the nights we were both still in the office at 3 a.m., fueled by vending machine coffee and bad pizza. And gradually, miraculously, things started turning around. One of our biggest breaks came 9 months into the pivot. A Fortune 100 financial firm called Fairfield Bank was looking for a partner to protect their cloud infrastructure. They'd been burned by a breach the year before, tens of millions of customer records exposed. They were terrified. I flew to New York and pitched our new platform personally. I walked into the boardroom feeling like a kid crashing a party he wasn't invited to. The executives were polite but skeptical. "You're small," one of them said bluntly. "Why should we bet on you instead of Microsoft or Palo Alto?" I smiled. "Because they're selling products. We're selling certainty." They stared at me. I continued. Titan's only job is to keep your data safe. We're not chasing 1,000 side businesses. We're not distracted. We exist solely to make sure no one ever sees what's in your vault. You deserve a partner who cares as much about your security as you do. A long silence followed. Then the CIO said, "All right, show us what you've built." 3 weeks later, we signed a 180 million multi-year contract with Fairfield Bank. When the announcement hit the press, our phones exploded. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to Titan Systems. New leads poured in from all over the world. Our reputation as a scrappy, specialized security partner was taking shape. That night, Jessica and I went out for drinks at a rooftop bar downtown. The city glowed beneath us. Jazz played softly in the background. "You know," she said, raising her glass, "you might actually pull this off." I grinned. "Funny, I was about to say the same to you." She tilted her head. "So, was Harold right or wrong?" I paused, thinking back to the countless times Harold's voice had snarled in my memory. "You'll never be CEO. You're too soft." I think Harold was right about one thing, I said quietly. Being CEO means making hard calls. You can't always be liked, but he was dead wrong about the rest. You don't have to be a killer to lead. You just have to give people something worth fighting for. Jessica lifted her glass. To something worth fighting for. We still had mountains to climb. We were competing with giants. We were small. We were vulnerable. But we were alive. And for the first time in years, Titan Systems was free. Not Harold's kingdom, not Ridgeview's investment pawn. Ours. A few months later, I received a letter forwarded through my assistant. The envelope was elegant stationery. No return address. I unfolded the paper. It read, "Alex C., here Titan's back in the headlines. I always said you were talented. I didn't realize you'd be the one to prove me wrong. Harold." No apology, no warmth, just a grudging acknowledgement. But for once, I didn't feel that old fury. I smiled, set the letter aside, and turned back to my work. Because the future was waiting. 12 months after signing the Fairfield deal, Titan Systems felt like a completely different company. The hallways buzzed with energy instead of fear. Our developers and security analysts were working on cutting-edge threat detection algorithms fueled by a sense of purpose. Our sales teams were booking meetings with clients who'd never given us the time of day under Harold's reign. We weren't out of the woods financially, not by a long shot, but we were gaining momentum. And for the first time, people were genuinely proud to work at Titan. It was on one of those crisp fall mornings that I found myself standing in the lobby, waiting for the elevator, when I heard a familiar voice behind me, Alex Brennan, the man who killed the king. I turned. Harold Pierce stood there in a navy overcoat, his silver hair slicked back, a hint of a smirk, curling one side of his mouth. For a moment, the breath left my chest. Seeing him in the flesh here in my building was surreal, like a ghost stepping out of a nightmare. "Harold," I managed. "What are you doing here?" He glanced around the lobby. "Relax, I'm not staging a coup. I have a meeting with one of your board members. I'm consulting now. Apparently there's still a market for cranky old bastards who've run companies into the ground." He grinned, showing perfect white teeth. "I'm sure there is," I said cautiously. He studied me for a long moment. "Place looks different. People look happier." "That was the idea," I replied. He tilted his head. "I read about the Fairfield deal. Impressive. And the Ridgeview buyback. I didn't think you had it in you." "Yeah, well," I said, crossing my arms. "Turns out I'm not as soft as you thought." Harold gave a small nod. "You're still soft, Alex. But that's not the insult you think it is." That threw me. I blinked. "Come again." He shrugged. "I led with fear. You're leading with purpose. People follow you because they believe in you. That's rarer than you'd think. Doesn't mean you'll survive, though." "I'm aware," I said coolly. The elevator dinged. Harold stepped forward but paused just before the doors closed. "For what it's worth," he said, voice lower now, "I'm glad you proved me wrong." Then the door shut. The encounter rattled me more than I wanted to admit. For years, I'd defined myself in opposition to Harold. I'd wanted to beat him, outshine him, bury him. And now here he was, mortal older, no longer the monster in my head. Instead of triumph, I felt strange, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. Because 2 days later, we got a call from the Department of Defense. The call came through our business development office, a new cybersecurity initiative, massive federal budget. They were looking for vendors to develop next-gen cloud security protocols for critical infrastructure. Jessica stormed into my office, her eyes lit up. Alex, this is it. I skimmed the brief. It was enormous, multi-year, potentially worth $500 million. But more importantly, it would cement Titan's reputation as a security leader worldwide. It's a moonshot, I said. We'd be going up against giants. Yeah, she said, grinning. So the next few weeks were a hurricane. Proposal drafts, NDA negotiations, government security clearances for our top engineers. I spent so many nights in conference calls that I barely remembered what my own bed felt like. Our competitors were brutal. Cisco, IBM, Raytheon, companies with billion-dollar lobbying budgets and entire teams dedicated to government contracts. But we had one advantage they didn't. We were small enough to move fast. The final pitch meeting was scheduled in Washington, D.C. We flew out the night before. Jessica sat beside me on the plane laptop, balanced on her knees, tweaking the slide deck for the 100th time. You nervous? She asked. Terrified, I admitted. Good, she said. Means you're not Harold. We presented in a cavernous federal conference room beneath fluorescent lights that made everyone look vaguely seasick. There were 8 government officials on the other side of the table, silent and stone-faced. Jessica handled the technical portion. I handled the strategic vision. I explained how Titan could deploy scalable zero-trust security in a fraction of the time of the big legacy vendors. How we'd build AI models specifically designed to protect critical infrastructure from nation-state attacks. Then one of the generals leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, with all due respect, you're small. How do we know you'll still be in business 5 years from now? I looked him in the eye. Because we're betting our entire existence on this, I said. The big guys can afford to fail and keep going. We can't. That's why we'll make sure we don't fail. The room was silent for a beat. Then the general cracked a faint smile. Well, that's an honest answer. 2 weeks later, I was in my office when my cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar Washington area code. My pulse kicked up. Alex Brennan, I answered. Mr. Brennan, said a woman's voice. I'm calling to let you know that Titan Systems has been selected as the primary contractor for the Department of Defense Cloud Security Initiative. I felt like the floor vanished beneath my feet. That's incredible, I stammered. Thank you. You earned it, she said. We look forward to working with you. I hung up stunned. Then I sprinted down the hall to find Jessica. I burst into her office, practically shouting, We got it! She blinked at me. The DoD contract. I nodded, grinning like an idiot. She let out a whoop so loud the people in the hallway jumped. That night, Titan threw an impromptu party in our cafeteria. Someone brought in cheap champagne. People danced between cubicles. Laughter and music echoed through the building. It was the happiest I'd ever seen this company. At one point, I stepped away and just watched. All these people who'd been terrified a year ago, now were smiling, hugging, believing in something again. Jessica found me leaning against the wall. Speech, she asked. I shook my head. Not tonight. Tonight I'm just an employee. She raised her cup. To the kid who bought the company. I clinked my glass against hers. To the people who made it worth buying. The DoD contract changed everything. Investors who'd once written us off as too small started calling. Our sales pipeline tripled. We began poaching talent from the giants instead of losing people to them. Our valuation rocketed past where it had ever been under Harold. Yet despite the growth, I refused to let Titan become bloated again. We kept our teams lean, our decision-making fast. I set a rule: no empire building, no middle manager kingdoms. Everyone had to be hands-on. A year after the DoD announcement, I was invited to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco. As I waited backstage, my phone buzzed. An email from a journalist, subject interview request from boardroom betrayal to industry leader. The Alex Brennan story. I smiled and shook my head. When I stepped onto the stage, the moderator introduced me as the man who proved his boss wrong and became one of the most important voices in cybersecurity today. I took my seat and glanced around the packed auditorium. Alex, the moderator, said, leaning forward, "Do you ever regret how this all started? The secrecy, the backroom deals. You went behind your boss's back. Some people would call that betrayal." I thought for a moment. Then I said betrayal would have been letting this company die out of loyalty to the wrong leader. The audience was silent. I continued, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do for a company you love is to save it from itself." A beat later, the auditorium exploded in applause. After the talk, a young man approached me in the green room. He looked about 25, wearing an ill-fitting suit, eyes shining with ambition and fear. "Mr. Brennan," he said nervously, "I'm working under a boss who keeps telling me I'll never make it past middle management, that I'm not cutthroat enough. Should I leave, I thought of Harold, of Ridgeview, of the years I'd spent thinking I was small, because someone powerful told me so." I rested a hand on the kid's shoulder. "Don't let someone else's ceiling become your limit," I said. "If they won't give you the ladder, build your own." Back in my hotel room, I stood at the window looking down at the city lights. And for the first time, Harold's voice in my head was completely silent. The tech conference felt like a victory lap, but I knew it was just another starting line. Titan's success brought new predators circling. Bigger competitors, industry, rumors, and journalists all wanted a piece of our story, or a piece of us. 2 weeks after the conference, I was in my office when Jessica rushed in waving a tablet. "Alex, you need to see this." On the screen was an article from tech insider Titan Systems in merger talks with tech megacorp, sources say. My stomach dropped. "What the hell?" I said. "We're not talking to anyone." Jessica looked grim. "Doesn't matter, the rumor's out there and tech megacorp is loving it. Their stock just jumped 5%. I scrolled through the piece. It claimed anonymous insiders said Titan was quietly exploring a buyout. The article was pure speculation, but it hit our stock price like a bomb. The next day, reporters camped outside our headquarters. Clients called worried we'd get swallowed up. Employees whispered in the hallways, terrified that everything we'd built was about to vanish into another conglomerate. I gathered my exec team in the war room. "Everyone listen up," I said. "This rumor is a lie, but if we let it fester, it'll become reality. The market doesn't wait for the truth. It believes the loudest voice." Jessica nodded. "So how do we kill it?" I looked around the table. "We tell the world exactly who Titan is and who we're not." That Friday, I recorded a video message from my office. It was 2 minutes long. No fancy graphics. Just me speaking directly to the camera. "Hi, I'm Alex Brennan, CEO of Titan Systems. Let's clear up the rumors. We're not for sale. We're not merging with anyone. Titan Systems exists to build the best cloud security solutions in the world, and we're staying independent so we can keep our promises to our customers. We're grateful people are interested in us, but our answer is simple. Titan belongs to the people building it, and we're just getting started." We posted it everywhere: our website, LinkedIn, social media. The response was instant. Clients called to congratulate us. Employees flooded my inbox with messages of relief. Our stock rebounded within a week. Jessica found me afterwards, shaking her head in disbelief. "You realize you just fought off a billion-dollar takeover rumor with a 2-minute selfie video?" I smiled. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a PowerPoint. A month later, I was in New York for a cybersecurity summit when I got an unexpected invitation: private dinner with David Kaufman, CEO of Tech Megacorp. Jessica called me when she saw the email on my calendar. "Are you going?" "Of course," I said. "You don't turn down a dinner with Goliath." "But he's Goliath," she repeated. He's trying to buy you. That's why I'm going, I said. To tell him he can. David Kaufman was an industry legend, a billionaire known for charisma and cutthroat deals. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, Rolex gleaming on his wrist, and carried himself like a man used to getting what he wanted. We met at a sleek private dining room in a Manhattan skyscraper. The windows overlooked a glittering skyline. David smiled as he sat down. Alex Brennan, the man of the hour, you've shaken things up. I smiled politely. Thanks for dinner. He leaned forward. Look, Alex, I'm not your enemy. I admire what you've built, but you're tiny, and security is a scale game. If you join us, you'd have resources beyond your wildest dreams. Think global. Think unstoppable. I sip my water, and in return, Titan becomes one more logo on your corporate website. Come on, he said. I'd keep you running the division. You'd be rich beyond imagining. You wouldn't have to fight this war alone. I met his gaze. That's the difference between us, David. I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for Titan to stay Titan. David sighed. The market's consolidating, Alex. If I don't buy you, someone else will. Better it's me. I leaned back in my chair. Then you better hope it's not me buying you. For a moment, David blinked, truly surprised. Then he threw back his head and laughed. You're a dangerous man, Alex Brennan. Only to people who think I'm for sale. Back in my hotel that night, I called Jessica. How'd it go? She asked. I grinned. I told Goliath no. She let out a whistle. Damn. Over the next few months, Titan kept growing. We landed new government contracts, signed several Fortune 500 companies, and even expanded into Europe and in Asia with regional data centers. The more we won, the more competitors tried to slow us down with rumors, FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and even poaching attempts. But we had something none of them did. Loyalty. Our people believed in the mission. Clients trusted us because we were transparent and relentless. Then one morning I was reviewing quarterly numbers when my assistant buzzed me. There's someone here to see you, Mr. Brennan. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says you'll want to hear what he has to say. Who is it? He says his name is Harold Pierce. My breath caught. Send him in. Harold walked into my office wearing a simple charcoal suit. He looked older. The lines in his face were deeper, his hair completely white now. But his eyes were as sharp as ever. Alex, he said, closing the door behind him. Harold, I said carefully, what brings you here? He studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled out a folder and tossed it onto my desk. Megacorp is planning a hostile takeover. They're planning to partner with 2 hedge funds to short your stock and drive panic selling. I stared at him. Why are you telling me this? Because I know how they operate, Harold said. And because I don't want Titan to become someone else's trophy. I blinked. I thought you didn't believe in me. I didn't, Harold said simply, but I was wrong. And as much as it kills me to admit it, you're the best thing that's ever happened to this company. I swallowed hard. I never thought I'd hear you say that. He gave a wry smile. Don't get used to it. I opened the folder. Inside were confidential emails, memos, and even a slide deck laying out a multi-pronged plan to undermine Titan's valuation, spread rumors, and pressure shareholders into selling. It was damning. I looked up at Harold. How did you get this? I still have friends in low places, he said. I shook my head, half in disbelief. Why help me now? He shrugged. Because as much as I hate to say it, Titan deserves to stay independent. And because no matter what I said, you're not soft. You're the kind of CEO I should have been. That afternoon, I called an emergency board meeting. Jessica was there, eyes flashing as she read the documents. Alex, this is nuclear. Yeah, I said, but it's also leverage. We made 2 moves. 1, legal threats. Our lawyers drafted a cease and desist letter accusing Megacorp of market manipulation and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. 2, public truth. I released another video telling the world exactly what Megacorp was attempting. I named names. I showed documents with redactions. I stared into the camera and said Titan Systems is not for sale. We will not be bullied. And anyone who tries to undermine us will face the consequences. The video went viral. Clients called to express solidarity. Our employees rallied. Megacorp's stock fell 5%. 2 days later, David Kaufman called me personally. Alex, what the hell are you doing? Defending my company. I said, stay away from us. David sighed. Fine. You win for now. Harold dropped by my office one last time before leaving town. He stood awkwardly for a moment, then held out his hand. Congratulations, Alex, he said. You're not just CEO. You're the owner of your destiny. I took his hand and shook it firmly. Thanks, Harold. He started to leave, then turned back. Oh, and if you ever tell anyone I helped you, I'll deny it. I grinned. Of course. That night I sat alone in my office. The building was silent. I looked out at the city lights and thought of the kid I'd been 15 years ago, the kid who believed Harold when he said I'd never be CEO. And I realized something profound. All those years I thought beating Harold was the victory, but the real victory was learning that leadership wasn't about crushing enemies. It was about building something worth defending. 2 years after I bought Ridgeview out of Titan Systems, I found myself back in the same hotel ballroom where Harold had once bellowed at us about toughness. Only this time there was a shimmering blue Titan logo projected onto the stage backdrop, and I was the one waiting behind the curtain. A polite young event manager poked his head in. Mr. Brennan, you're on in 5. I nodded. My palms were slightly damp. It never really went away, that nervousness before stepping on stage. But I'd learned to channel it. Jessica appeared beside me, looking elegant in a navy suit. Remember, she said, no matter how many people are out there, you're just talking to one person at a time. I smiled. You sound like you've done this before. She smirked. Only about 300 times. Go knock 'em dead, CEO. The ballroom was packed with over 1,000 people. Investors, clients, partners, and Titan employees. A hushed silence fell as I stepped up to the podium. I adjusted the mic and looked out at the crowd. I was once told I'd never be standing here, I began. That I'd never be CEO. That I was too soft, too sentimental. There were murmurs in the audience. Many people knew the story by now, but not all of it. I've learned something in the years since. You can lead with fear, or you can lead with vision, but only one of those leaves a company standing 10 years later. I paused, scanning faces. Titan is still standing because we chose vision. We chose to protect what matters most. And we're not done yet. The applause started slowly, then it swelled into a roar. After the speech, I spent an hour shaking hands and posing for photos. Everyone wanted to talk about the DoD contract, our new encryption breakthroughs, and whether Titan might go public again in the future. I was answering a question from a client when my assistant tapped me on the shoulder. There's someone here asking for you, she whispered. He says he used to work for Titan. I frowned. Name, she hesitated. Peter Howell. My breath caught. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. Peter Howell had been one of Harold's fiercest loyalists, the guy who'd always defended Harold's reign of terror, who tried to block me from getting promoted at every turn. When Ridgeview took over, Peter was one of the first executives we let go. I hadn't seen him in years. I found him standing near the back wall nursing a glass of water. He looked older, softer around the middle, but his eyes were still sharp, assessing everything. Peter, I said cautiously. Alex, he extended his hand. I shook it. I almost didn't come tonight, Peter said. Figured you'd have security toss me out. I raised an eyebrow. Depends what you're here for. He chuckled ruefully. Fair. Listen, I've been following Titan's story. You proved me wrong. You proved Harold wrong too. I wanted to say, I'm sorry for how I treated you. That stunned me. I'd expected sarcasm, maybe bitterness, but not that. I cleared my throat. Thanks, Peter. He nodded, staring at the Titan logo glowing on the wall. I thought Harold's way was the only way, but you built something better. You kept Titan alive. You made it mean something again. He glanced at me. You hiring? I blinked. Are you serious? Peter shrugged. I'm good at operations. I'm tired of working for companies that don't believe in anything. I studied him. I could still remember the way he'd smirked when Harold humiliated me in meetings. But people can change. Hell, I had. Send me your resume, I said finally. We'll talk. Peter smiled genuine this time. Thanks, Alex. After the event wound down, I sat alone on the edge of the stage, swinging my legs like a kid. Jessica joined me, carrying 2 plastic cups of champagne. To the kid Harold said would never be CEO, she toasted. I raised my cup. To the woman who kept the CEO sane, she clinked my cup. Did you ever imagine this? All those nights you were sleeping in under your desk, I laughed. Not in a million years. Jessica tilted her head. You know, there's something we haven't talked about. What's that? She gave me a knowing look. Harold's retirement party. I groaned. Oh, God. Because yes, it was happening. After dabbling in consulting, Harold was officially retiring. And in the most Harold move possible, he'd booked the biggest ballroom in the city and invited every former Titan executive to witness his farewell. He'd even sent me an invitation. You're invited, Mr. CEO. Come see how it's done. Harold, Jessica grinned. You going? I have to, I muttered. If I don't show up, he'll tell the world I'm afraid of him. Well, then you'd better make it memorable. 3 weeks later, I walked into the Grand Regency Hotel for Harold Pierce's retirement gala. The ballroom was decked out in Titan blue. Old executives, industry rivals, and reporters mingled over shrimp cocktails and expensive scotch. Harold stood near the stage holding court in a custom-tailored suit. He was older, but his voice still carried across the room like a drill sergeant's. I made my way through the crowd. When Harold spotted me, he raised an eyebrow. Brennan, you came. Of course, I said. Wouldn't miss it. He grunted. We'll try not to fall asleep during my speech. About halfway through the night, the MC called Harold up to the stage. He launched into a classic Harold monologue, loud, brash, peppered with jabs at weak CEOs and soft leadership. People laughed politely, but it felt out of step with the times. Then he said, now there's someone here tonight who once thought he'd be CEO, but I told him he wasn't tough enough. Turns out he bought the company instead. He scanned the room. Alex Brennan, get up here, Viana. I blinked. The entire ballroom turned to stare at me. Jessica nudged me from behind. Showtime. I stepped onto the stage, heart pounding. Harold handed me the microphone. Go on, he said. Tell them how wrong I was. I met Harold's gaze. For a moment, it was just the two of us on that stage. No crowd, no cameras. Then I turned to the audience. Harold Pierce is the reason I'm standing here, I said. Not because he believed in me, but because he didn't. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But here's what I've learned. Being CEO isn't about being feared. It's about giving people a reason to believe. And while Harold and I disagreed on almost everything, I owe him this. He made me fight for what I believed in. I looked at Harold. So tonight I'd like to give Harold a gift. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a crisp official envelope. Harold frowned. What's this? I handed it to him. Your termination letter. A stunned silence swept the ballroom. Harold blinked. My what? I smiled. Technically, Harold, you're still listed on Titan's Board of Advisors. It's an honorary title. But I've decided your services are no longer required. Laughter erupted around the room. Some people gabbed, others hooted and clapped. Harold stared at the envelope, then burst out laughing so hard he nearly doubled over. You son of a bitch, he wheezed. I should have known you'd pull something like this. I leaned closer. You taught me well. He wiped tears from his eyes, shaking his head. I'll drink to that. Later, as people filed out of the ballroom, Harold found me near the bar. That was a hell of a speech, he said. Thanks. You really firing me, I grinned. You're retired, Harold. Go fish or yell at clouds. He chuckled. Fair enough. Then he sobered. I meant what I said, Alex. I was wrong about you. I extended my hand. And I meant what I said. Thanks for making me fight. He shook my hand firmly. Then Harold leaned closer. One piece of advice. Yeah, he smiled slyly. Never believe your own hype. I laughed. I'll try. As Harold left the ballroom, people crowded around me, slapping my back, laughing about the firing heard round the world. But as the noise faded, I found myself standing alone looking out over the empty dance floor. Jessica appeared beside me. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, just finally feels like the last ghost is gone. She tilted her head. So what's next for Titan? I smiled. Exactly what we said. Stay independent, build the best security tech on Earth, and make sure no kid ever gets told they're not good enough to be CEO. Jessica held up an imaginary glass. To the future. I clinked her invisible glass. To the future. And that's how the man who said I'd never be CEO became just another name in Titan's past, and how I finally became my own kind of leader. 3 years after Harold's retirement party, I found myself standing on a beach in Northern California, barefoot wind whipping my hair around the Pacific, crashing in rhythmic waves. Titan had just closed the books in its most profitable year ever. We'd been named one of the top cybersecurity companies in the world. We were protecting some of the most sensitive infrastructure on the planet and doing it under our own flag. A lot of people kept asking me, so Alex, what's your exit plan? When are you selling Titan? When are you cashing out? And every time I gave them the same answer, I didn't build this to sell it. I built it to last. A few weeks earlier, Harold had sent me a postcard from some fishing lodge in Alaska. On the back, in his messy scrawl, it read, "Retirement's not so bad, but don't get soft up there on your throne, kid. The wolves are always hungry, H." I chuckled when I read it. The wolves were always hungry, that was true, but I finally knew how to keep them at bay. One Friday afternoon, I gathered the entire Titan team in our headquarters atrium. The sun streamed through glass walls, catching the blue in our logo and lighting up faces full of excitement. I stepped up onto a small stage. Most of you know the story of how I got this job, I said. Some of you even lived it. But I want you to know one thing: you're all CEOs in your own way. You don't have to wait for someone else to hand you power. You don't have to let anyone tell you how far you'll go. I paused, letting that sink in. Titan belongs to every person who believes in protecting what matters. And as long as I'm here, we're never selling. We're never folding. We're never going back. The team erupted in cheers. People clapped, whistled, and hugged each other. As the noise faded, Jessica appeared at my side. She leaned in and said, "You realize Harold would say you're being sentimental again." I grinned. Yeah. And I'd say, that's the whole damn point. She shook her head fondly. So, Mr. CEO, what's next? I looked out over my team, feeling the same jolt of electricity I'd felt on my very first day a lifetime ago. Next, I said, we keep building, we keep fighting, and we prove every single day that the best revenge is running a company people love. And that's the story of how the kid who'd never be CEO bought the company and finally became the leader he was meant to be.